Hello, welcome to JIBRIN Angle on Oweleke TV. My name is JIBRIN, and this is my angle. Once again, thank you for joining us on this episode of My Angle with Barrister Austin Manta, my regular and consistent guest. If you're not joining us for the first time, obviously you will know his face. But if you're joining us for the first time, Barrister Manta is a very senior legal practitioner of over four decades in profession. And we shall be talking about various matters that borders Nigeria's polity. And I think we shall be talking something, we shall be going at least with global with just one matter arising actually. So Barrister, thank you once again for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
All right. Let me play. We shall be talking. Okay. Let me not even say what I intend to bring up as the first topic. But let me play this video first, and we'll take it up from there.
You are on African soil, not for the first time, but this would be a good moment to ask about one of the countries that has taken its own autonomy, and that's Burkina Faso. Yeah. Your remarks recently at the Senate seem to suggest that he's diverting, General Traoré, is diverting its 4 billion gold reserves to sustain his military rule rather than for public welfare. These remarks sparked widespread condemnation across the continent. What did you mean by that statement?
Let me speak to Burkina Faso's sovereignty. They maintain their sovereignty. They make their decisions how they use their resources. They make their decisions who their resources go to for military support. That's their sovereign right. But my cautionary tale was just from a military perspective. That was a Senate Armed Services Committee asking me a direct question. Burkina Faso, a lot of great things going on to progress them forward, okay? But then when you look at the military part of it, knowing that that's the epicenter of global terrorism, it was my time to illuminate that this is probably their weakest point, and there needs to be sufficient resources going towards for the whole fight of terrorism in that country. Period. They make their decisions, though. That's their sovereignty, their sovereign right to make their decisions, what is appropriate, what's not. But I wanted to illuminate that it's going in the wrong direction now. ISIS is getting stronger. JNIM is getting stronger. Al-Qaeda in the lands of the Maghreb is getting stronger in that country.
And do you think it's getting stronger after General Traoré took over?
It has. Just look at the numbers of attacks. It really has, since 2022. I've been tracking this since I took command. So, no ill will towards him, but the decisions is their own. They're looking for other ways to be able to, they're still on warfighting footing. It's just going to take more resources.
So you stand by that statement? Because there's been pressure on you to walk those statements.
All right. The interview went on and on. That was a four-star general, and I think it should be. I've forgotten his position in the. He's one of the commanders. I've forgotten his position in the U.S. military. Now, something came up at the U.S. Congress, and I think that was what it was, the general belief or general propaganda. That's the propaganda from the West, actually, that Traoré is the Burkina Faso head of state, Ibrahim Traoré, is actually, I think they have gold worth, I think, about $4 billion worth of gold. I don't know whether it is something that is in monthly or annually, but at least what that he is actually using that to sustain himself in power. That is the allegation against him from the West. That's the propaganda. Barrister, based on what we are seeing on ground being achieved by Traoré, and I don't know, what do you think? What do you think about the propaganda of the West against Traoré? They're trying to diminish his performance. Is it true what that general said? Is it true that the terrorism is getting worse? And if it is getting worse, how come? How come the man is succeeding in actually building infrastructure? If terrorism is getting worse, obviously where you have insecurity, we have the same situation in Nigeria. I remember that Abuja Kaduna road, because of insecurity then, the road was abandoned. The construction companies, they abandoned the road. The project became very, very slow. So obviously where you have insecurity, you will definitely have problem with development. You will have definitely situation that impedes development. So, but what we have in the Burkina Faso today is the reverse. The economy is doing well. The infrastructure demand is seriously fast. The infrastructure is doing well. The investment is booming. Everything is booming in Burkina Faso. Yet the West is just propagating this false narrative that Burkina Faso is getting worse. Barrister, do you believe what they say, what that general said? Not just the general, the West, that's the West, that's what the West said. In fact, that news came from the US Congress.
If I remember correctly, General Q.C. Brown, chairman of the Air Force of the U.S., when he was reporting to Congress, is the commander of the U.S. Air Force, Q.C. Brown, if I remember correctly. So it is in line with what the West always does. We have come to predict and know what they will say, how the line they will take when things do not go their way, or in the way they want to use to manipulate situations. They don't see anything good in any other alliance, any other partner that the third world can partner with. If you don't partner with the West, you're on the wrong path. That is the classic language and line they take. So it's predictable. You don't expect him to come to the Congress and say, oh, Burkina Faso under Traoré that has aligned with Russia and China is doing well. Of course, you know, American politics will not allow that kind of commendation. So I do not expect anything less. But coming back, they talk without reference to history. Since independence, Burkina Faso has been under the tutelage of France, of its colonial master. France has, just like Niger and other Francophone countries, have military bases in those. They were military parts with this country, just like we had with Britain at our independence. And the idea was, okay, an emerging African nation with a very tiny army, you need the overlord of your colonial master to help to protect the country. But over time, we saw that it was never the intention to really do that. The Western military forces have the capacity to finish or to eliminate the threat to the security of the African states, the West Africa and the Sahel states. But they will never do that because they want to maintain their military bases and manipulate the government and people of those states. So they dish out in small doses. They ensure that their military do not actively combat and eliminate the threat, because that way their relevance will remain. If, for instance, they completely eliminate the security threat, some people will start saying, oh, why do we still have these people here? So they do small actions, but the security threat remains and the country becomes bound to them. They look at them, these people will help us from being overthrown. Over time, we Africans have come to realize that this was hypocrisy, this was manipulation, and their presence has not really helped us. Let's explore other avenues. Let's take our destiny in our hands. This is what is happening in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and other places. Look at what happened in Ivory Coast. It was the French military bases in Cote d'Ivoire that was used to remove President Gbagbo and install Alassane Ouattara, who has now defied all the constitution and has remained in power by force with the support of the French forces. So that is what the West always want to do. Any person that wants to come to power that does not align with them, they will not accept it. And they will use their military presence in that country to do that. We are coming to recognize that this is not right. This is what happened in Burkina Faso. They have expelled the French. Now they are calling in China and Russia to help them security-wise. And of course, you expect the West to clap for them. No. So that kind of statement.
But okay, now my problem is I don't get it because what are they trying to achieve here? Because globally, I don't know. Does it matter whatever the West says globally? But the most important, usually, what one will expect is such propaganda is supposed to be the target of such propaganda is supposed to be local for the local consumption, so that at least to be able to sway the local support away from Traoré. But what we have is the West. I don't know. We don't expect the West because Burkina Faso obviously will not. Such kind of propaganda will not. The media organizations there will not. Okay, there's no doubt about that. There are some media organizations in Burkina Faso that is actually bought and paid for by the West. So probably this propaganda will move on. We have the same thing in Nigeria too. Some of these media organizations are puppets of the West. So I can understand that, but we have a very, very strong Traoré narrative, positive narrative going on in Burkina Faso. Obviously, because if they are pushing this kind of propaganda, and it's not effective, such propaganda is not effective locally, that where it is needed. Because if you don't get local support, if you don't get local support, obviously Traoré remains there. So if you cannot get the local support with your propaganda, why wasting your time in the first place? Because everybody knows that Traoré is not only super popular, extraordinarily popular in Burkina Faso right now, but in the entire African region. Everybody adores him right now. That is the people, the right people, not the corrupt people. The corrupt people still don't like him, but a vast majority of Burkina Faso citizens and even Africans are supportive of this man, and they are the ones actually giving him more and more oxygen to continue to do the right thing. Because this man is doing everything about this man is just I won't say perfect, but almost perfect. The man is just spotless when it comes to, you just can't fault him on anything that he's doing right now.
You are forgetting that, one, American interests are permanent. Two, they play in the long term. It's not just a short-term issue. They are going to go at the problem until the opportunity comes. Now, two things. The insecurity has not finished. It's still on. Secondly, within Burkina Faso, there are people who are against Traoré. As popular as he is with the people, there are forces that are against him, and these forces are being used and can be used by the West, by US. So the US need that narrative in the US to be able to support anti-Traoré forces in Burkina Faso, which they are doing. Of course, you should have heard that the man has survived a couple of coup attempts to eliminate
more than
him.
a couple, more than five, I think 4 or 5 or more than 7.
So you can see that they are not resting on their oars. They are doing a long-term strategy. Things will go down at a point, and their strategy will now come to the fore. If anything should happen and people begin to suffer, whether temporary or not, all their plans, all their support, all their financing of the opposition against the government will become powerful. Like I said, a lot of people who are trying to eliminate him, of course, we have to understand that they are being financed from outside the country. Otherwise, the young man has come, he is doing well, he's taking the country in the right direction. Whatever problems are, why don't people rally around him, support him, so that together they can succeed? But no, look, go back to independence. All the popular African leaders from Kwame Nkrumah, Moise Tombe, this man in Zaire, others, all were eliminated by the West, by the CIA. Sponsored coups against popular leaders that wanted to assert independence, wanted to take their country in the right direction. In those days, it was cruel and brutal assassination by CIA. Now it is a more enlightened and refined policy to encourage people to rise against those popular leaders. So they have these long-term plans. It's not just a short-term issue of, okay, the man is popular, we cannot do anything. They have that plan on the ground. As things are going, things will go up, things will come down. When things come down, of course, you trust the forces that are anti-Traoré, they will rise up. So that is the strategy. Our response and the response of all progressive people in the country is to be consistently supportive of any government that asserts the independence of the African states, asserts the independence of their policy and decision making. Unfortunately for us, like Nigeria, we don't have that independence in policy making. If you must know, there are some ministers in Nigeria and some particular agencies that they must have a kind of support from the US before they appoint a person. I'm telling you as a fact.
Yeah,
They
no, I
must,
agree with you,
like
of course.
Petroleum, like the NDLA, some other agencies, they must get approval, so to speak, before they appoint a particular person. So they don't have, they are there, you are head of state, you are president, but that independence, freedom of decision making is not there. So it is incumbent on all Africans, all of us, to support leaders who want to assert economic independence, who want to assert freedom of decision making for us in the continent. That is the only thing that will help us out of the pit that we have been put inside. They gave us independence knowing that we didn't have the wherewithal militarily and otherwise. Even the understanding, look, it is now that most of us are understanding the overall worldview. At independence, even before, most of us did not understand the geopolitics of the world. We just took things hook, line, and sinker, what we had from CNN and the rest. It's now that people are beginning to re-examine the relationship of our country with the West, with our former colonial masters and the rest of the world. So even now, with that understanding, even when we invite China now, we are cautious. When we invite the USS Russia, we are still cautious. We don't give them the carte blanche like we gave the Western countries before. Because we too, we have to, even as we partner with them, we cannot trust them 100%. That is the understanding.
Let me ask you, I don't know why I don't know if it's a coincidence or something. The problem is from France, because the francophone countries are the Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso were the ones that actually pulled out of. In fact, they expelled French influence on their country, on their countries. And I don't know, is that a coincidence or something? That is something that is so common with French or France rather, that makes them weak. Because I don't know, because we've not had such issue with the US controlled countries. like Nigeria. It's sort of, but we have with so is do you think that the problem is from the leadership of the either I think present leadership of France that these three countries are actually French colonies? They are the ones actually they are the ones that have pulled out of their that have expelled them expelled their influence from their country. Do you think it's a coincidence or France is doing something wrong?
It's not really the new leaders. It's a product of the way colonialism came to Africa. The way France, the colonial policies it took, as against the colonial policies Britain took. In all French colonial countries, France brought a policy of what they call assimilation. You become French citizens, even though you are in Burkina Faso, in Algeria, in Mali. You have the policy of assimilation. You become French citizens. At independence, they were given French passports and the rest. Now, this only affected mostly the elites, some of the educated people. It never transcended to the average person. Now, and the economy, by policy of that assimilation, the economy was so interwoven with the French economy and the franc, the French currency. It was so tightly intertwined with the French that they hardly had breathing space. The other countries were more like Britain, where they colonized Nigeria. And
is that not the reason why it's supposed to be more difficult? It's supposed to be more difficult for these countries to pull out?
It has been difficult for them to pull out, but something opened their eyes, and it's still opening their eyes. Like I said, France has military bases in all these countries. And I gave you the example of Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, where they used the French contingent in the country to remove President Gbagbo and install Alassane Ouattara and continue to keep him in power. Now, what opened the eyes of most of the people in the Sahel is the ISIS and the insecurity. When this came, they turned, normally, France, their overlord, has the best military there, the Air Force, the army on the ground, whatever you can think of. They buy their arms from France. With that, you expect that your master or your overlord will be able to suppress this insurgency and this ISIS threat. But it has hung on for decades. And they see incremental effort. They see a hypocritical effort by the French to deal with the problem. The French have not come all out to deal with that problem. They want to dish out in small doses, but at the same time allowing the insecurity to threaten this country. So people have begun to wonder, why are you here? And we are suffering all these attacks, all this degradation, all this insecurity. We thought you have such a powerful military that you can protect us. So that began to open people's eyes that, well, maybe we should look elsewhere, or maybe these forces, we don't actually need them. That is what happened. But the old brigade, people, you see most of them, the young people, the old brigade found it very difficult to come out of their shell and take on the challenges that the new reality threw on them. That's why you see young people like Traoré doing that. And the old people opposing, the old group opposing them, because their mentality, their upbringing, everything is tuned towards their colonial masters. That is what is happening in this state. And let me even go ahead and predict. If tomorrow Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire leaves, I'm telling you the French forces in Cote d'Ivoire will also be expelled. Just like it's happening in these other countries. Other people are also casting and looking. If this experiment succeeds, we are going to follow suit. Even in the British colonies like Nigeria and the rest, people are looking, they are keenly interested in what is happening in the Sahel countries. If they go on for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and it's a success, believe me, our own this thing in this British colonies will also transcend. It's going to change.
I don't
It's
know.
as simple as that.
Honestly, I just pray that I don't know. The Nigerian situation is quite complex. Um, I, we are. I think the problem with that of Nigeria is it is almost impossible for us to pull out. It is possible, but except we have a situation where a military coup takes place. But if we continue under this dispensation, this sham called democracy, it's practically impossible because the truth is these countries, our politicians, corrupt politicians, virtually all their most part of their assets are actually domiciled in the West. That's just it. U.S., especially U.S. and UK. Sort of so
I agree with you.
they will use that to blackmail our leader. They will never, because it will be a threat to them. They will use that to threaten them should they try to do any stuff like that.
I agree with you 100%. The more we continue with this corrupt and bankrupt fake democracy, the more it suits the West. The more we are tied in the apron strings of the West. That is just the truth. The West are happy with the situation we are in because they control us, they control everything. Any change in the status quo will not be to their advantage. And they will fight together with that. Is why you see people like Tinubu feeling very confident.
Yeah.
Because they believe they have the backing of the West.
Yeah.
And the West will come to their aid if anything should happen. That is just it.
And of course, that is why he's just doing whatever he likes. And because honestly, we really need to take our destinies in our hands. Otherwise, we just Nigeria will just keep getting beaten up all the time. Nigerians, to be precise, actually, will keep getting beaten.